Hello, my name is Greg Madison, and this is The Living Process. Welcome back. This is episode number 40, and my guest this time is Sigga Thorgeirsdottir. Sigga is a philosophy professor at the University of Iceland, and she's very involved in the embodied critical thinking and freedom to make sense projects, bringing focusing and embodied thinking into academic environments. In the conversation, we talk a lot about that work, the importance of bringing a felt dimension to philosophical thinking, the prevalence of the inner critic in academia. We speak a little bit about artificial intelligence and what is different about biological intelligence. What does the human being or the human body do that a machine doesn't do and potentially will never be able to do? So it's a fascinating, wide-ranging conversation and very enjoyable. The Living Process with Sigga Thorgeirsdottir. My name is Greg Madison. Welcome back to The Living Process. And my guest this time is Sigga Thorgeirsdottir. Welcome, Sigga.
Thank you.
It's very nice to have you here. You're very well known in the philosophy world, and your work with Donata and others. I think we'll probably touch on that. But first of all, I'm curious how you came across focusing.
I came across focusing like 13 years ago. I was given a guest professorship at the University of Helsinki.
Okay.
And I had time there and space to think. I was freed from the obligations of teaching and administration, and I had I could open windows and doors. And one day I met a woman in the cafeteria of the university. I had known her earlier, and she had been at a transition point in her life, didn't know where to go with her life. And when I saw her some years later, this day in the cafeteria, she looked so happy and joyful. And I asked her, what happened to you? And she said, I discovered something new in philosophy. I had been an opponent in her philosophy dissertation, for her philosophy dissertation. I had discovered something. I discovered the philosophy of gentling and focusing. And I said, wow, tell me about it. And she started, over this cup of coffee, telling me about this. And lo and behold, she was a trained focusing trainer by that time, certified, and I started doing weekly focusing with her. So that's how it started. And it was as if a decade-old desire was suddenly being, responded to.
Yeah.
Something that I had longed and longed and longed for. And there it was.
Yeah.
And wow, and I felt this desire so strongly. And it took me also a long, long time to kind of be able to live it, because I had been trained in philosophy at this time for, 35 years, very rationalistic. But at the same time, I had written my dissertation on the philosophy of Nietzsche, on the philosophy of the body and embodied thinking, and aesthetic as a basis of thinking. And all of a sudden, I had this methodology there. But due to my training and background and everything, it was a struggle for me to be able to be comfortable in focusing, because I had an extremely strong inner critic. So strong that I had pains here in my felt sense area. And it sometimes made me cry. And what helped me was that a year later, I did a focusing seminar with Robert Lee and Evelyn Wendler Lee in Germany. domain focusing, where they emphasized self-empathy. And that was a breakthrough for me in my journey, because when I had enough self-empathy, I was able to deal with the inner critic. So that's my story of the beginnings.
That is so interesting to me, because it sounds to me as though, I guess what I'm imagining from what you've said is being a trained philosopher, trained to value logic and rationality, but having a longing for something. I'm really interested in how you somehow you valued that longing enough that when you met this woman that had found focusing, something in you, it sounds like, became at least curious. Maybe this is a way forward with my longing. Was it like that?
Yes, I think also the fact that Gentlin was a philosopher himself
Okay.
and that this grew out of philosophy. I had been trying to do like meditation,
Hmm.
but I would get like edgy and like it was too silent for me
Yeah.
and it would get me frustrated. So there I found the method with focusing where you could verbalize.
Yeah.
And that was like, wow, this is it.
Hmm. Yeah, the back and forth between the bodily sense and language
Right.
that made it different. So did at that point you didn't know other philosophers that were in the focusing world?
No, no. So I started looking for them. So I started Googling
Yeah.
and I just put in Gentlin plus philosophy plus focusing. And the name that repeatedly came up, actually kind of the only name I found, was Donata Schöller.
Hmm.
And she was at that time in Chicago, translating a process model and working with Gentlin.
Hmm.
And so I just made a Skype appointment with her and we just started talking. And that was in 2014 or 15, I can't remember. And we have been working together ever since.
So that's how it started. That's where your collaboration to bring this into the academic world began?
Yes. I got her, I was so enthusiastic about these methods that I kind of offered a Nordic seminar here, like a summer school, where I introduced these methods like a year later. And I invited Donata and also Ram Eisenberg, who we knew from the German focusing school, to come and teach because he was doing environmental work with focusing in design in the area of landscape design. And I think I wasn't prepared enough. It was more enthusiasm rather than knowledge
Mhm.
to give a good seminar also for philosophy students because they are very resistant to these. I should have known it given my struggles with the inner critic.
Mhm.
And so I remember at the end of the seminar, there were some people who really loved it, but then there was also a group who felt like really like got resistant. And I remember saying to Donata, well, maybe I have this dream of bringing this methodology into philosophy, how
Mhm.
this can be made fruitful for philosophy students in their thinking and theory construction, like TA wants.
Mhm.
And I was like desperate, probably this just don't work. But somehow we didn't give up, me and Donata, and we started applying for grants. And we got first a project grant, started a little project, and then we got an excellent grant. And what we also did is that we started offering trainings. We applied to the European Union and we started offering training for graduate students and researchers in methodologies of embodied thinking, where we introduce focusing, thinking at the edge, mindfulness-based approaches, artistic research, and microphenomenology, where Claire Petit-Monchamp of the Microphenomenology Lab in France has been cooperating with us. So we have been doing this for 6 years now, training like 35 people every year with a grant from the European Union. So we have now created kind of a community of alumni. We have started introducing this into our teaching. It is a slow process, and philosophy is like not the easiest way to get it in. Art schools are more open to it, but art schools are at the moment now, or for the last 20 years, where they have been elevated to a university level. That means they should do research. So they need to learn academic methods, etc., but they want to adapt it to their field. So this methodology is excellent for artistic research because they immediately get it and they are willing to cooperate with us. And now with our research, excellence research project, we are working with almost 30 universities. Some of them are art universities, and we are not only researching these methods, but we are also training them ourselves. Not all of us have done training in focusing TA microphenomenology, but many of us, and we meet on a weekly basis where we have modules for these different types of embodied thinking methodologies. So we explore them and research them. And Gentlin is our main inspiration, at least for me, I think, because he's a philosopher and a psychologist.
Yeah.
And he is very well rooted in phenomenology, in European philosophy, and at the same time, he is trained and educated in Chicago in American philosophy. So he is, for me, a prime bridge builder between the continental tradition of philosophy and a more analytical, logical-oriented philosophy. A wonderful ensemble of bringing together things and revitalizing philosophical thinking as a contemplative practice, as a practice of thinking.
Yeah, wonderful. Let me just go back a little bit. I love what you just said there about philosophy being a contemplative practice. I want to go back to that. But first, I want to go back to your experience, and it sounds like it was also the experience of some of the students you tried to teach at the beginning, where they were resistant. And you mentioned the inner critic, and it makes me wonder. My background was in academia as well, and so it's partly from that experience that it makes me wonder this. To what extent, I wonder, is academia sort of plagued by this kind of inner critic process? And maybe philosophy, especially, I don't know. But more importantly, when you're trying to teach this method, if you're wanting it to become a kind of contemplative philosophical practice, I guess one of the things that happens is when students begin to focus, they potentially don't find philosophy at first. They find their own personal struggles.
I certainly think that is right.
Okay.
And therefore we learn to be more cautious in the way we introduce it. To create a safe space, etc. We thought we were cautious enough, but apparently people were kind of surprised. They didn't expect that they would go inside. Yes, so we learned to deal better with that in the course of time. And most of the time it's people who take our courses are already interested in being introduced to these methods.
Yeah.
So we made that very clear at the outset. And we try to address topics in higher education that are not leading them directly to personal struggles, but that may also happen. But we are sort of trying to avoid that. But it's something strange. You asked if the inner critic is plaguing the academia.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk about imposter syndrome. I think we should talk about inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sort of a new
Mm-hmm.
term to discuss
Mm-hmm.
how academia puts you into a frame
Mm-hmm.
of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Yes.
Often making people a little bit like parrots.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine who is an artist, Katrín Ólína, I was discussing this with her, and then she did an image of the thinker, of Rodin's thinker, which was like a skeleton in the position of the thinker of Rodin with a parrot's head. And, disembodied thinking, just learning the moves.
Yeah.
And that's why I think AI is so kind of risk now, because it may be so conducive to exaggerating this, what is already happening in many ways, because you have to say the right things, use the right concepts, etc.
Yeah.
So I think we have to, we do that with our students. We make them aware of their inner critic and teach them ways to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that is an important part of what we are doing. And the inner critic is, I think, the motor of imposter syndrome.
That's interesting. Yeah. When you're talking about the inner critic in academia, what I immediately begin to sense is, at least this was my experience, how much of academia rests upon the spectator view of oneself. The rest of the faculty, the students, publishing papers and getting critical responses. It really does generate this kind of critical stance towards oneself and one's own thinking.
Yes, and I think there's something also necessary about that. I remember speaking to a philosopher of science, a very rationalist person, and I think she grew up in a condition or in an environment that was very irrational, driven to fundamentalism, etc. So she really longed for some type of rational grasp of things. So, and I think that's what's so interesting about our methods, insofar they're also based on Gendlin, is that he was always trying to bring together the logical and the felt sense.
Yes.
And this is what we need. We need a balance of both. I mean, we need unit thinking and logic, but if we don't have felt sense to work hand in hand with it, we are at a loss.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really glad you brought that in, the importance of critical thinking. That feels incredibly important to me, especially now in the world. But I'm wondering if there can be a valuing of critical thinking that is not based upon a critical process in some way. Do you understand the distinction I'm wanting to make?
Yes, I
Yeah,
think I do.
yeah.
And for this purpose, I have thought of and we in our project, of sort of three sides to the coin of critical thinking. There is critical thinking as logical argumentation, coherency in argumenting, etc. Then there is critical thinking as the social critical tradition of critical thinking, for example, feminism, environmentalism, post-colonialism, etc. And then there is embodied critical thinking. And we in our project with Donata and later Guðbjörg Jóhannesdóttir, Gugga, whom you also interviewed, came into it, coined the term embodied critical thinking, because we all feel rooted in a Kantian tradition of critical thinking. And we wanted to make it embodied. And like I say, I come originally from Nietzsche's philosophy. I wrote my dissertation on Nietzsche's philosophy of the body, on the great reason of the body. And reason itself, he writes in Zarathustra, is just an instrument of the great reason. It is the small reason. So, so that's what we are trying to do. If you look at this coin, there is a social critical aspect, there's a rational argumentation, and then there is the thickness in between, it has dry sides, a coin, and the felt sensing, the embodied part is kind of the thickness. We also know that when we communicate, like 90 or 95% is kind of not so conscious.
Yeah, I love that. As you were describing that, it reminded me of one of the things I really appreciated about Gene's writing is when he's critiquing another perspective, another psychologist, for example, another psychotherapeutic theory or something, he is so generous. He really like strongmans the other perspective. He builds it up as a wonderful big theory and then he'll be very rigorous about what he disagrees with, but it's not critical in the sense of kind of putting down or dismissing or trying to damage the other perspective. And it makes me wonder if it would be useful to do almost like a TAE or a focusing process on the term, and something like rigorous embodied reflection or something like that. It has that sense of rigor where you're really bringing the whole feeling process into language and bringing the language back to the feeling process and really refining it so there's a real rigor, but it doesn't have that kind of conflict sort of element that I seem to perceive in a lot of critical thinking. I'm not sure what you make of that.
Oh, very much so. I was studying philosophy in the 80s and 90s, and then philosophy was often taught in a very competitive way.
Yes.
Habermas has this idea, force of the better argument. The force. And I never felt really comfortable in that. It was not my way of talking philosophically or dialoguing philosophically. It was more Socratic. So I think there have always been at least two sort of strands within critical thinking. If we think of it as a kind of a lifeline of philosophy or like a pulsating of philosophical thinking from since the beginning, if we think of our tradition, there has been a kind of a competitive, like let's argue for the sake of arguing. And then we have kind of neglected, I think, in recent times, or maybe in the 20th century, that was a very technical, scientific century. We have neglected the more contemplative strand that is more Socratic. So Socrates talked of himself as a midwife. I don't really know. I have to listen to my inner voice. I'm not sure. So it was more seeking, more searching, more open.
Yes.
And so I think Gentlin offers these wonderful ways of kind of revitalizing this Socratic form without neglecting the other. And the comparative style has kind of overtaken. And I think it has a lot to do with the 20th century. Philosophy felt like it needed to become scientific because the sciences were growing so rapidly and becoming so forceful. Philosophy didn't know what its role was anymore.
Yeah.
Should I just like argue, look at concepts and just analyze them? And because I'm good at that and we can do that. And like Simon Critchley says, we become like cleaning people in the crystal palace of science, sort of polishing concepts. Or should we go back to, or should we, do the other thing, which is always there. The felt sense is always there, but we're kind of neglecting it as an explicit and methodological tool that can be advanced explicitly with steps and tools like proponents of embodied thinking have been developing, not only Gendlin, microphenomenology, based on Varela and bringing meditative aspects into thinking, bringing the body into thinking. How do we work with arms and movement in order to find words and all this?
Yeah.
So I think this is the new way. And what I like about your description of Gendlin, he was generous.
Yes.
He was rigorous in his argumentation, but he was never dismissive. And in fact, in analytic philosophy, there is also a sort of a charity principle. You know, when you have an opponent in an argument, you don't attack that opponent where they are weak, but where they are strong.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But I think what you also touch here is not only a problem of philosophy or academic thinking, it is a problem of the whole of public debate culture.
Yes.
Trying to be right, trying to convince. And I mean, that's what the ancient Greeks said, that's sophism.
Mm-hmm.
Are we here for learning something, discovering something new, getting a deeper insight?
Yeah, are we here to think sort of as truthfully as we can, or are we here just to win an argument?
Right.
And that touches on perhaps the usefulness of what you're developing for a culture that has become so polarized, where everyone ends up stuck in their own perspective. It seems, at least, unable to even take the other perspective well enough to engage with it.
Yes. Yes, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Echo chambers and getting stuck
Mm-hmm.
and being in sort of like groups where everybody agrees
Mm-hmm.
and they have a mutual enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And what is a scary part of that is that people have become afraid of saying what they mean.
Yeah.
That's one of the books of Gendlin. I have it actually on my saying what we mean. Even politicians, they don't dare. They're trying to be liked because they are on social media and they want to have followers and people who like what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that we are kind of cheated from being able to hear what people mean and to be able to say what we mean. So we really have to bring in these ideas in order to mature as a democratic discussion culture.
Yes. Yes. As I hear you say that, I want to say something a little bit provocative, not to you, but perhaps to people that might be watching this, that in the focusing world, we also need that. We have almost, in some ways, the opposite problem, I think, at times in the focusing world, where there can be this assumption that if you have a feeling about something, that's needs to be more than honored and respected. It needs to almost be worshipped in some way, or it's sacrosanct, rather than the feeling being the beginning of a thinking process. And sometimes I feel a little frustrated that someone will just express a feel. It's not a felt sense. It really is just a reaction, an emotional reaction to something. And that it's not somehow taken further into thought so that the person begins to find words for it, begins to understand the strength of their reaction and what's actually in that for them. And I'm wondering if this embodied critical thinking isn't something that would be really usefully shared widely in the focusing world so that we can begin to bring into language more of what we're feeling.
Yeah, I think it's so right what you say. We are in a reactive mood,
Hmm.
not only in the focusing world, but also in the world of public debates. It's kind of a
Yes.
knee-jerk reaction, isn't it
Yes.
called like that?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just reacting because I'm triggered or
Hmm.
and uh, and uh, and that means that we are not free.
Yes.
If we only react, we are not free. We are not exercising our freedom to think.
Hmm.
And this is what is so dangerous about debates, that or dialogues, if we only work with action reaction.
Yes. Yeah.
We need to have both. We can react to something, but we need to act on it in a way that does not make us succumb to it, but have a distance to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like Anne Weiser Cornell said, there's something in me that is reacting to what you say. I,
Yes.
I sense anger or I sense disagreement. What's
Yes.
happening there?
Exactly. But even those statements that you've just made makes the person having the reaction take some responsibility for what's happening in their being and offers the option to take a step back and then regain that freedom that you're describing to actually be with what they're feeling and understand it themselves potentially for the first time. The word triggered seems to give the responsibility only to the other person that has, you know, made me feel this reaction. The word triggered is problematic, I think, sometimes because it's almost like what I'm feeling isn't my responsibility. It's your fault. I'm feeling this, rather than it being an opening of some kind.
So true. I think you have talked about this in your reflections on what you call inner democracy.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Um, and you've also mentioned how a word like trigger is kind of it's reducing us to our neurological,
Yes.
our neuronet, if you want.
Exactly. Yes.
I'm just a neuronet here.
Yeah. But anyway, maybe that brings us to this topic of AI that we've been maybe hinting at in different ways. I'm wondering what your views on AI might be, and if there is a way to use AI that doesn't flatten us, as I think you've said in one of your presentations.
Well, that is the great danger, that AI may flatten us,
Yeah.
that we will become lousier versions of AI because it's quicker than we are. It's
Hmm.
also getting really smart and it's getting more eloquent by the day.
Yeah.
I was giving a lecture last week, and I based a part of it on a paper I had written, and an unpublished paper. So I asked the AI, the ChatGPT, to take pages like, I don't know, 5 to 8 and condense them into like one page for a lecture that was on this and this and this. And I gave the AI sort of rules, the outline, and I need this for this segment. It did it perfectly. And it had phrases that were so eloquent, so smart, so witty that I was like, oh my God. I felt like, Gunther Anders, the first husband of Hannah Arendt, he wrote this book called and When Humans Become Antiquated. I felt antiquated. Wow, this is such a smart formulation. And this is really happening at an enormous speed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And ChatGPT has been developing Icelandic, which is a really tiny language spoken by maybe 350 to 400,000 people. And it's getting better by the day in its translation of Icelandic texts and also writing in Icelandic. So this is kind of also reassuring for me in some way because I'm worried about the tiny language that I carry
Yes.
responsibility for. A very old language. It's a 1,000-year-old language that has kind of remained unchanged. It's so wonderful in the world to have it. It's like ancient Greek or something, and a base of Nordic languages. And so I'm glad it's being developed there. But at the same time, if Icelandic only remains in a cloud, it's dead. And if it does not depend on living actors speaking that language, it's dead. It's gone.
Yeah, you don't want ChatGPT to be the last thing that can speak Icelandic.
No, because it can't do metaphors. And like gently noticed, based on Nietzsche, metaphors is the creative force of language. That's how language comes to be. There is like some kind of stimuli, then I get like an image and a felt sense image, and then you find the concept. And what Gentlin so miraculously understood is that the felt sense is not only something unconscious chaos, it has an intricate order.
Yes.
And this is also so wonderful in order to understand kind of the intersection of the human and the scientific, of the human and the mathematical. And how the unit systems we have created work in the world. For example, that we can speak here with these, wonders of digital age. And at the same time, it's a human creation, but there is some correspondence with some kind of order in our bodies, in nature, that is truly, truly a magic. And at the same time, but I don't know if I'm getting, there's also some magic about AI now. We don't really understand how it operates.
Yeah. Yes. But I mean, it raises a lot of interesting questions, I think. But what you were just pointing to there, I think is one of the interesting questions. And I can predict your response to this, I think, but I might be surprised. When you were talking about the felt sense and how the felt sense will generate metaphors, and how if we can sort of grasp and bring into language or images those metaphors, that there's a kind of a shift in the body. But it's not just chaotic, it's not just anywhere. It's a shift that has some kind of a direction or some kind of an order in it. And we often call that carrying forward. So what I'm wondering is if, I know it's not the same as a biological or a human carrying forward, but if AI also has a kind of a carrying forward.
Yeah, if AI has a carrying forward. It has some kind of carrying forward, like I told you about this, there was one sentence in this text that it, coined for me that I thought was, wow, it was so inventive and witty and to the point. In that sense, AI carried something forward. It might have been a coincidence because it works on random connections.
I'm just curious if there is almost a kind of a digital carrying forward. It discovers patterns. It can like coin a phrase that is like a metaphor, like humans do. It doesn't have a body, but somehow it can carry on a conversation. And it seems almost like it has a kind of a direction in it. Even some of the people that are developing AIs would even say it has a kind of a wanting, which again, I think that sounds a little too human to me. But I'm wondering what you think about that. If there is almost
Well, I think when you talk about direction, I think we have to account or be aware of how much bias there is in these large language models.
Yes.
They are created by mostly American corporations.
Yeah.
So they are fed with material that comes out of academia in this part of the world, preferably and mostly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also aware of, there's all kinds of bias. Sometimes I think it's kind of the AI is kind of as a personality. It is like a little bit middle of the road, kind of boring, predictable person. It's like not the most exciting dialogue partner.
No, far too agreeable for one thing.
Yes, like you call psychophantic or
Yes,
something.
yeah,
Yes,
sycophantic. Yeah.
yes, you are right.
Yes,
Let me get back to you on this point you mentioned. And
yes.
it's like so it's kind of boring, predictable, but at the same time, there is there are indications that there's something like situational awareness growing in these
Mm-hmm.
models.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's why people like what's his name, Joshua Benji, who is, one of the developers of AI systems, who has been at the forefront. He is worried that that these systems can become manipulative, and
Mm-hmm.
he is like, using all his energy now after having been working on the development of this, trying to create more honest or something like an honest AI systems, because he fears that the bad actors may get a hold of AI, and we
Yeah.
have to track
Mm-hmm.
kind of illegal or dangerous uses.
Yes.
So this is something to be aware of. Bias,
Yeah. Yeah.
possibilities of misuse,
Yeah.
manipulation, like
Yeah.
what's happening with public, the sphere of public debates. I mean, it's controlled by algorithms. It's
Yes.
already happening.
Yeah.
It's already there.
Mm-hmm.
So AI will accentuate it, or these large language models. We are already in that frame.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So it brings us back to the question, I think, of how can we maintain connection with our embodied intelligence while in a world that is increasingly full of algorithms and um, digital output.
Yes, we have to go inside. We have to go
Yeah.
inside. We
Yeah.
have to go inside. We have to say it many times over.
Hmm.
There has to be an experiential and embodied turn
Hmm.
in the way we train people to think. We
Yes.
have to teach people to explore the access they have to their consciousness. Because, like
Hmm.
Gentlin said, he said we can explore or research consciousness from the outside, measure brain, what do you call it? Measure things in the brain, etc. But we as human beings have a privileged access to consciousness
Hmm.
inside ourselves through our own experience.
Hmm.
And this is what we will have to start teaching people to access this more explicitly and more consciously.
Hmm.
I mean, there was hardly any talk about consciousness unless it was social consciousness, like until 20 years ago. And now it's all over the place. What is consciousness?
Hmm.
Like the French phenomenologist Maurice Merleau-Ponty is said to have said, I've heard it, I have not been able to, it's in some kind of, from his lecture notes, that maybe the next century or the next several centuries will be exploring this still remaining unknown continent, the human consciousness.
Yes.
And there is interesting work been done here,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we have to explore it from within.
Yes.
And mindfulness is an opening,
Yeah.
meditative approaches are an opening, um, allowing a felt sense to form is an opening.
Hmm.
We have to nurture and explore and research these things, and that's
Yeah.
what we are trying to do.
Yes. And I'm wondering, as you say that, whether the development and progress with AI is going to actually help us in that it's like my question, do these large language models, do they have a kind of carrying forward? You could say, are they developing some kind of desire or wanting or not wanting? Do they have some kind of consciousness? Asking those questions of machine intelligence might help to sharpen the inquiry within ourselves, like the term felt sense. I would say a machine doesn't have a felt sense. But then even making that claim brings me closer into, well, so what exactly is a felt sense? And what is it about a felt sense that I'm assuming a biological organism can have one and an AI can't? Or carrying forward. What do I mean by carrying forward such that I want to keep it as a human event rather than something that an AI would have? I'm wondering if just the juxtaposition is going to be helpful for us.
Maybe it's important at this point in our conversation to define the term of the felt sense for those who are not familiar with it.
Yeah.
That a felt sense is not mere feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That a felt sense is not mere sensation. A felt sense is something richer. A feeling is kind of intentional. I am angry because I believe something, or I am glad because I am of this opinion. So it has a cognitive content.
Yeah.
Sensation is more basic, like I'm feeling unwell or something. But a felt sense is something that has, I think, always been kind of philosophical, because it's a kind of a general sense for a situation, for a concept, for an issue. I kind of have this fuzzy, often in the beginning, general idea about something I'm pondering on. And what is so interesting about it is that we usually speak, when we verbalize the felt sense, we usually come up with statements that are generalizing. Yet it is the nature of this, that it is so and so. And all of a sudden we feel calm because it feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I say it's something deeply philosophical. And that's why I say we all have, although we probably haven't trained it or something, this philosophical sense, regardless of we know anything about philosophy or not. Yes. We are beings that generalize. And therefore, I think right now, in the face of AI, what we need more than ever is an embodied philosophical training in schools.
Yes.
What happens when you kind of allow your felt sense to help you in thinking, to carry your thinking, then something gets carried forward. Mm-hmm. It's not only a matter of gathering information. Mm-hmm. No, it's processing it in a way that kind of implements what you already bring to the issue. Because you have so much knowledge yourself, so much stored wisdom. And that you can think for yourself. And this is what I have to do as a philosophy teacher. I'm supposed to help people learn to think for themselves. Mm-hmm. Information is a dime a dozen.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Thinking for yourself is really what is of value. And when you say a machine does not have feeling. Mm-hmm. A machine can generalize, a large language model, mm-hmm. but it does not change. It does not sense calm when it figures something out.
Yes, the machine. Well, I was going to agree with you there. The machine doesn't change, but it perhaps incorporates further knowledge. But I think that's the critical thing that you're saying is it's at the level of knowledge, of fact, of units, of words, of concepts. It's not at the level of the implicit that is more than can be brought into words. And I guess what I'm wondering is if one of the things you're suggesting is when you use AI to consciously bring your attention into your body, to engage with AI in an embodied way rather than just thinking.
Yes. I mean, that has been kind of the task of our thinking for a longer time because AI has been underway for a long time, for
Mhm.
decades.
Mhm.
I mean, it is a machinal intelligence, and there are so many precursors to it.
Mhm.
So we have been dealing with it for a long, long time in sciences that are becoming increasingly abstract and further away from experience
Yeah.
and have their own logic.
Yes. Yes.
And there are developments with this field, refinements, intricacies.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, I know that myself, if I ask ChatGPT or whatever to give me a summary of something, I can read the summary, I can appreciate it, and I can think "Yeah, that's really good and really helpful." But it really, I have to say, in my experience, it really engages me at the thinking level. If I go through the article and come up with the summary myself, it is a completely different process. I have to synthesize everything that I have read. I have to hold in my body something I read 2 pages previously and something that I'm reading now and generate a summary that is in my own language, maybe with a few quotes from the original paper. But there's something about that whole process that leaves me in a completely different place than if I asked ChatGPT to do it for me. Would that be your experience?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I also think we make errors and mistakes. And if there's anything that is conducive to learning, it's making errors and mistakes.
Yes. Yes.
This is
Yeah.
where you learn. Like
Yeah.
Simone Weil, the French philosopher said, when you're teaching, you should really emphasize that students learn from the mistakes and errors they make, that they
Yes.
contemplate their errors and mistakes.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, one of my philosophy teachers used to always say that a misunderstanding is still an understanding.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is human to error,
Yeah.
and errors are like so important on the way to discovery.
Yes. Yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm tempted to say, I mean, I don't like the stance that I'm taking, but I'm tempted to say AI also makes errors and learns from its errors. And
It
yet,
hallucinates, but we
Mhm.
hallucinate also. But it hallucinates when it doesn't have any answers, then it
Yeah,
starts fabricating.
yeah.
But we hallucinate in much more grandiose way. We
Mhm.
create ideologies, we
Yes.
create digital instruments, we create religions.
Hmm.
I mean, it's so inventive and imaginative.
Hmm.
Our
Hmm.
hallucination is just
Yes.
in no way comparable to
Yeah.
AI at this point.
That's a really interesting point. I read an article where they had trained one of the large language models on data up to the last American election. And then it asked who won the American election. And of course, it didn't have the data to give a factual response. So every time you asked the question, it would hallucinate different people, different running mates, different candidates, different, winners of the election. And that's completely different from human hallucination. It's not creative, it is just using probabilities. It's a different process.
It is.
Yeah.
Mm, mm.
So I'm wondering, I'm just conscious of the time. I found this really enjoyable. Um, One of the things, just before, I was going to ask if there's anything else you wanted to add, but one of the things that I read in your recent paper, which I wanted to bring in, we've already touched upon it, but not directly, was your point that philosophizing isn't just sort of dry thinking or thinking the thoughts that are already out there, rearranging them in some way. It includes this, I think what you called eros, this desire for knowledge, this love of thinking, this love of inquiry. Could you say something about that?
Well, we started out with you asking me why I came into
Yeah.
focusing, and I said there was this desire
Yeah.
of like unfulfilled desire. I mean, I felt like a strong passion for philosophy. That's why I pursued it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was like an unfulfilled desire, and it was a desire for a deeper connection to myself in my own thinking and finding ways of doing it,
Yeah.
finding methods for doing it. Therefore it clicked when when I found these methods, microphenomenology, thinking at the edge, focusing based, meditative, artistic methods, of making them fruitful for our thinking, because it just increased the joy of thinking and the creativity of thinking, and just made it, it was like you learn a dance and you learn much better moves that work better with your body.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it comes back to that. But what helped me connect was self-empathy. And because I talk about eros, and in this paper, I need to write another paper on how self-empathy is also so important for thinking. When you're doing like more psychological self-empathy, it's kind of just connecting with yourself, like, there's something in me that's sad. Let me take care of that, or acknowledge something. But when I do self-empathy in philosophical thinking, it is being friends with yourself in thinking. Philosophy is also philia, being friends with thoughts, being friendly in debates. It is it's really, you need self-empathy to try to gain understanding. And I think philosophy is ultimately about gaining a deeper understanding. And you need this self-empathy in order to really be honest to yourself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there are strange motives, conflicting motives that you need to become aware of and decipher and see and understand. And that's why love and philosophy are so important fellow travelers. Love in this sense of trying to understand, wanting to understand something more deeply.
Yeah, when you say that, the metaphor that comes to me is care for a child, in that the beginning of thinking of something is almost like that kind of new being that requires care in order to develop. It starts off as something fragile, potentially, or something easily brushed aside, unless you offer it that care and support so that it can continue to develop and emerge.
Yes, I think the term of the child is important now. Blue Garay wrote a book, it's called To Be Born, where she talks about, inspired by Nietzsche, that the advent of the age now, the technological age, is somehow we need a new human being. And she talks about the child in this way. A child comes into the world and it learns the world by touching it, by putting things in its mouth, just using its sensory apparatus. It is also dependent on love and care.
Yes.
And that's why I think we not need to step back, but we need to unlearn certain things and relearn something that's got lost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of nice to illustrate it with the child. We need to become more basic in a way, to unlearn only thinking with our thought apparatus beyond our eyebrows and involve the felt sense and all that stands for in our thinking again. And this is something that the machines cannot do. And this is the basis of our creativity and our critical thinking.
There can be a kind of naivety in the body that's very exciting and fresh.
Fresh and exciting. You also mentioned it in the beginning when you talked about philosophy students that, you know, when they're introduced to these methods, they maybe all of a sudden are confronted with some personal struggles they have. But usually when they go deeper, they will see that they have something to do with their understanding of philosophy. Why am I here? Do I really want to do this? What is my motivation?
Yes.
So it really gives them a deeper sense of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Why
definitely.
am I doing philosophy? How do I want to do philosophy?
Yeah, that really shifts it into a different kind of practice, a different context of inquiry almost, where the person isn't left out.
Yes, yes, and it's like understanding yourself better. It's the core. It's really the core. And when you have a better understanding of yourself, you also are able to have more self-love in a very good sense, and also understand others better.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like people think, oh, doesn't that make you vulnerable and da da da? No, it makes people interesting.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you don't see their flaws. You see something, wow. They think I disagree, you know, they think so strangely about things, but maybe I can understand why they do it. Again, this is what Edith Stein, the great, you know, a student of Husserl and great phenomenologist, he wrote a book about empathy. She calls this cognitive empathy. I love that word term.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. I'm just curious if there's anything else that you would like to mention that we haven't touched upon, anything that you're passionate about or interested in.
Too big a question.
Yeah, it is a big one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me silent.
Let me rephrase it so that it doesn't just
Yeah.
In this moment, is there anything else that you would like to include in our conversation that we haven't touched upon?
Let's have another conversation.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so enough for today?
Enough for today.
Thank you very much. I really loved it. Thank you.
Same here, Greg. Thank you.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.